sportlov i poddfabriken.
Pappa, hör du mig? Hej och välkommen till en helt ny avsnitt. Och idag ska vi prata om rymden.
Man pratar ju om the overview-effekt. Att man liksom blir påmind om att jorden inte har några landsgränser när man ser den så där uppe från rymden. Men som svenska rymdentusiaster kan vi ändå tillåta oss att känna lite extra glädje och stolthet, tycker jag. I och med Marcus Wandts rymdresa kan Sverige nu stoltsera med att 3 svenska medborgare varit i rymden.
Och idag så bjuder vi på något så unikt som alla 3 på samma scen, samtidigt. För Marcus, du fick äran att leda ett samtal mellan Fuglesang, Jessica Meir och Marcus Wandt när de såg som hastigast hos Saab förra veckan.
Ja visst. Och i det här avsnittet får du höra delar av det samtalet. För det spelades också in som ett tv-program som kommer att finnas tillgängligt för allmänheten alldeles snart. Så får du inte nog av de svenska rymdfararna som pratar med varandra så släpps det här samtalet snart i sin helhet med bild och allt. Håll utkik i våra sociala medier för mer information om detta. Jag heter Marcus Pettersson.
Jag heter Susanna Levenhaupt.
Och du lyssnar på Har vi åkt till Mars än? Ja, de flesta astronauter påpekar hur tydligt det blir att vår jord är så liten och ömtålig när man ser den från rymden. Att det inte finns några gränser utan att jorden är vårt gemensamma hem och värd att värna och ta hand om.
Men en rymdresa är ju också så mycket mer än bara en påminnelse om vår egen litenhet. Och de här 3 astronauterna har såklart kommit hem med helt olika erfarenheter i bagaget. Och eftersom arbetsspråket i rymden är engelska så är det också engelska som pratas i samtalet.
Och vi börjar med skillnaderna. För de här 3 tog ju sig till rymden med olika farkoster. Så hur stora är egentligen skillnaderna? Och vilka är de?
Yeah, very big difference. You know, the Soyuz is a capsule, so most of the spacecrafts ever established, ever built, are capsules because it's the simplest way, most robust and simplest way to design something to come back. Really, it's the return that you're worried about in terms of protecting, having a heat shield to protect. But I'll let Krister talk about the space shuttle since I was never lucky enough to fly in it. But the Soyuz, you know, it lands, it has a parachute to slow it down, and it lands on land. They describe the landing, they call it a soft landing in Russian, and you describe it, a lot of people have described it as sort of a small car crash, but I actually did think it was quite soft. The parachute slows you down, and then there are actually these soft landing thrusters on the bottom of the vehicle that fire just before you hit the ground to help offset some of that impact as well. But I actually did think it was a fairly soft landing. Then we kind of rolled onto our side, unfortunately, and I was kind of hanging upside down, which isn't the most pleasant when you've just come back to gravity. But I always thought that must be easier than landing in the water. So
landing in the water, actually, when it comes to the bang, the sound of the bang was quite high. It was it was not a splash, it was more a bang.
Yeah.
But the feeling was not that. You could feel it, but it was not super strong. But then, no rolling, of course, but still a lot of bobbing. It was the old sea, so it was not very windy at the time, but there were still a lot of seas. You could see everything was going, and you're in there, I don't know, until the egress for about 40 minutes.
You get seasick now.
That's a real risk. But and you know the windows they're not really shard, but they're not very transparent either. But you could see the horizon. I think on Soyuz they crack them out, right, to pop the windows so you get it clear again. Here you do not do that, but you have you can see, I could still see the horizon. So sometimes so I could see that. Yep, we're stable one,
helps,
so we're
right?
heads up. Compared to if it's stable 2, they would be heads down.
That would not be so nice.
I think so. Yeah, no, but it worked out really nice, and also very well strapped in, right? So it's not a movement there.
You explained something yesterday, which I did not felt. I did not feel. I know it's easy. During the launch, and you said you could feel the G-forces. Of course, we felt the G-force. But you felt that the speed was going up then.
Yeah.
My guess is that because you are a fighter pilot and you kind of probably associate acceleration to increasing speed.
Yes,
because I had no feeling like, increasing speed.
Yeah, no, that was unexpected, but very strong. And I think exactly as I say, I'm used to pushing the throttle forward and feeling the acceleration in x-axis and how that accumulates integrates up to a speed. And the feeling right now is 300 knots, 400 knots, 500 knots.
Yeah, and that the vehicle will break soon.
No, exactly. And what was different in aircraft. Right? You have this strong acceleration at first, and then the acceleration comes off, and then it meets an equilibrium where you're at your max speed. But here, the acceleration just kept going and kept increasing, right? More and more G's. So that was I did not expect that feeling of accumulated velocity, which was very strong without seeing out. And that was a fantastic feeling.
Yeah. The other difference is that you can see, right? I mean, Soyuz is covered by the shroud, so you can actually see the launch complex. You can see outside in Florida, right?
Yeah, and you...
and I was sitting downstairs. I didn't see anything from the shuttle.
No, that's right. I have a window at my feet, so I could actually see out. But on the other hand, fairly quickly, we get up and you can only see sky or clouds. So it's not... coming back, though, in the re-entry, before the plasma starts building, it was still a quite low altitude, having almost 8 kilometers per second. So you could really see Earth passing by super fast. Didn't really expect to see that clear either. And at that point, it was difficult to, since we didn't have there was a slowing down, right? So and at that point we hadn't started slowing down. So that was more difficult to feel how fast it was going, like to feel that. And then when you saw it, so it kind of more looked like someone had started spinning the Earth real fast because it just passed like this. Yeah, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, the shuttle, it's quite shaky in the launch. The first 2 minutes when they had these 2 boosters on the side, they were kind of difficult to. Manufacturing strategy really got a soft start, but then afterwards you just very slowly increased the G-forces and you leveled out at 3G. I think you probably got more on the Soyuz. But coming back with the shuttle was very benign. I mean, if you had as most 1.6G, you probably had 4 or 5.
4.2, I think.
And it was a little bit of shaky, but not worse than you're in a rough airplane ride, basically. So that was a big difference. I would say how we went to space and came back from space.
And we haven't had anything else like that since. Now all of the new vehicles are capsules, again, because they're that sort of simple design. The space shuttle was very unique in that, landing kind of like an airplane.
And today you're riding with mostly with SpaceX, with the Dragon capsule. So what's the biggest difference between the Soyuz and the Dragon, you would say?
Probably the landing. The Dragon lands in water, so like the Apollo missions did. And Soyuz still lands in land, and that's just really one of the drivers for the countries in which they were developed. If you have a lot of spare land, then why not? In the Soyuz, we land sort of in the middle of nowhere in Kazakhstan, and then really, though, most of the world is made up of oceans, so easier target to land in the ocean.
But there's a new capsule coming online, maybe this year, should come this year, and the Starliner from Boeing. And that is actually planned to land as a capsule on land, like the Soyuz is doing.
3 olika astronauter i 3 olika farkoster. Och en av de största skillnaderna är alltså sättet man landar. Christers NASA-rymdfärja kom tillbaka till jorden lite som ett flygplan och landningen kändes kanske inte helt olik en skakig hemkomst från semestern.
Jessicas ryska Soyuz landade någonstans på slätten i Kazakstan och Marcus amerikanska Dragon-kapsel plumsade ner i havet utanför Florida där de låg och guppade en stund i väntan på att bli upplockade.
Jag hade blivit så sjuk.
Ja. Men tillbaka till själva vistelsen i rymden. Vilken del av respektive uppdrag har varit mest intressant?
It's difficult to say what's most interesting because they're interesting for several different ways. So the research, for instance, feels very interesting to me. First, I learn things about it myself, especially if I'm maybe not especially, but if I'm also the subject to research, where you do medical research or observation of how you react to microgravity, and then also some of the tech demonstrations are really interesting. But then I also like maintenance, for instance, to pick things apart and change something out and make sure that the station is still running. It feels that feels important as well in another way, and I like using tools and tinkering with stuff. So that was also very rewarding. And then the outreach, calling down to earth and talk to kids, asking all these awesome questions that I had myself also, and be able to get that question and then just try it out in the moment. They're like, how is it if you just lift your legs? Well, it's actually like this. So I'm moving a little bit up and down at the same time and around my center of gravity, which was also amazing. So it's hard to single one thing out. And that's the feeling I had throughout. It was never boring at all. And it was actually even only getting equipment, you have to float over or just fly over, push yourself and get something, and then maybe you do a somersault on the way. And so it's just pure fun.
Yeah, I think Marcus answered it well. I think one of the best parts about our job in space or even here on Earth is that we're doing different things all the time. So you're never really bored, and it's never just sitting in an office at a computer. It's all very active. We're doing science one day, spacewalks another day, fixing things another day. So that's the part that appeals to me the most. But I think if I had to pick one favorite, it would be the spacewalks. I got to do 3 spacewalks, and as you know, that really it's a different feeling because you're out, in your own little mini self-contained spacecraft, and the view is different, and we spend a lot of time training to do that. So I think that's probably my favorite. But of course, as a scientist, it was very rewarding to be, like Marcus was saying, you're the subject up there. You're contributing to this incredible data set for all the scientists back on the ground. And I think like that, like all the things that we do, it comes with a great deal of responsibility too. You feel, how fortunate you are to be the one that's up there, and you don't want to make a mistake. You want to make sure that you get everything accomplished so that you can help out with the data set on the ground, with the operations on the ground as well.
Yeah, well, spacewalks number 1. I fully agree with you. But, and the funny thing,
next time.
Next time I mean, the funny thing, I'm in the background. I'm a scientist like Jessica, but I didn't go there as a scientist. I went there as a construction worker, basically. They helped me to build a space station. Although I managed to do a little bit of science related to my background, which is particle physics related to kind of the particles which is in space, which is a problem for humans. There's radiation in there. So that was quite satisfying when I managed to at least do a little bit of that after all.
And if you talk some more about your spacewalks, what was the difference between both of your experiences on the spacewalks?
I think one of the big differences is that during the space shuttle period, the training was very specific because it was a shorter mission, so they knew exactly what they were going to do, and they
Except when you ran into troubles.
Right. But you had how many hours in the pool for one?
Oh yeah, we had many hours. I mean, I think the guideline then was that you would run 3 to 5 times exactly the spacewalk you're going to do. On the Hubble missions, they had it 10 times.
Right.
So, but you had more generic training.
Right. So they've been through every step since they were really planned on a short shuttle mission. You knew exactly what you're going to do.
True.
For the space station, it's more generic training because you don't know necessarily what's going to break when you're up there. My first spacewalk, for example, was a contingency one. We were planned to do the battery upgrades that I mentioned already, but there was a unit called the BCDU, so basically the battery charge discharge unit, responsible for charging the batteries and then getting the power out of there. So we actually had to replace that unit, and it was something that we hadn't trained. But because we have this generic training, it uses the same kind of tools, the same kind of interfaces. So we were adequately prepared to do that, even though we hadn't gone through each step in the pool. So that's probably the biggest difference with space station and shuttle spacewalk training.
Nej, Marcus hade ju faktiskt inte någon rymdpromenad inplanerad i sitt uppdrag den här gången. Så där har han något att se fram emot inför kommande resor, som vi såklart hoppas på blir snart.
Jessica däremot hann med 3 rymdpromenader under sina 205 dagar på ISS. Och Christer var under sina 2 rymdresor totalt ute på 5 rymdpromenixer. Och sådana uppdrag handlar ju nästan alltid om att utföra någon form av underhåll. Byta batteri eller fixa något som gått sönder.
Ja, vi kan nog vara överens om att de här 3 astronauternas uppdrag har skilt sig åt en hel del. Men vad har varit samma? Jessica var alltså på rymdstationen i nästan 7 månader 2019-2020. Christer var på ISS i 12 dagar 2006 och 14 dagar 2009. Och Marcus landade nyss efter 21 dagar utan fast mark under fötterna.
Det är typ 18 år från första till senaste svensken i rymden. En framtida svensk astronaut kan ha hunnit födas och blivit vuxen under den perioden. Så finns det några experiment som pågått under hela denna tiden som alla tre varit inblandade i? Förutom att bygga själva rymdstationen då?
Maybe not one particular experiment, but I think like a genre of experiments. So, for example, protein crystal growth experiments have been going that whole time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you did any of those.
Crystal growth.
Well, I didn't do much science. I built the station.
That's right. You were Krista was busy building
medical
it.
part as well, right?
Medical experiments.
Bone health is one of them, which I'm in. I know NASA is doing equivalent. We're looking at the same things, and the medical effects, which is not only medical effect of going to space and what happens then, but also since you get in a lot of those processes, you get an accelerated process, which makes it so much more controlled data-wise. So you can look at how it was before, during the mission, and after the mission, and learn the process of how our body works and reconstructs or degrades. And by using that, you can create medicine knowledge and create treatments and things. That's a big benefit for everyone on Earth. So I think I would be surprised if we haven't been all in that.
And all of those experiments, the results build on each other. So
every astronaut, as long as they live, if they want, they are kind of getting brought back once a year to the Space Agency for medical checkups, to continue collecting the data and all that. You all try to gather as much information as you can.
And this continues exactly as Chris said. It continues for a long time. So I know my program
until
now.
You die, or if you decide you don't want to do it more.
Yeah, exactly. And so, for instance, my several years in the future now, I will also go to US to do specific testing, and that's not only we need a bigger N number, right? We need more astronauts doing that, and I think both NASA and ESA and other organizations try to use all astronauts for a lot of those data collections.
En gång astronaut, alltid astronaut, vilket ju är toppen. För rymdfart handlar ju om så mycket mer än om bara att åka till rymden. För även om det är en cool del av det hela så pågår ju astronauternas stora arbete här nere, bland oss vanliga människor.
Ja, det är forskning om allt från astronomi till medicin till material och teknik. Och så forskas det såklart på framtiden och hur vi kan använda rymden.
Vi har ju hört våra 3 astronauter prata om deras 3 olika sätt att flyga till rymden. Men hur kommer man att resa till rymden i framtiden?
Well, I mean, the point is that it will not be one way. It will be just more and more ways going to space. There will be as a shuttle, the space plane, similar will come back. I mean, there's a company called Sierra Space. They are developing first now a cargo ship. This looks like a very small version of the shuttle. That's planned to fly the first time later this year, and then they have ideas at least to develop the bigger version for cruise also. We're going into, which we talked about earlier, an era of more space station, commercially run space station. They will be offering that gives the possibilities for various companies to build new space vehicles. So, you can't say there's not the one way how you go to space. There will be many ways, but it definitely moves into that, which NASA's already done now for many years, that they don't say, this is the vehicle to be built to bring these people to space. They have done it, they do it for the moon program, this Orion, but for sending people to space station, they can just say, who can do this? We will help you with some development money, but then we will guarantee you the service. We will buy your service. So these are some changes.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Is there'll be more and various, a diversity of opportunities. You won't just have, historically it's really only been governments that can afford the investment for the risk that's involved in spaceflight, but now we see several private companies that are doing things from suborbital flights, lots of different opportunities. You don't have to necessarily go and be in space for half a year on the space station. Maybe you're there for a few minutes, but it allows different ways for different people to experience, a little bit of what we were so fortunate to experience. And I think that's very exciting because more people will be getting to space in lots of different ways. I think really in the next 10, 20 years, I don't even know exactly what we'll see because like Krista was saying, we have all these different companies that are being innovative and coming up with some different technologies and different opportunities.
So, what is your next steps in this big space business? What will you be doing?
Well, when we're not assigned a mission, we work different jobs on the ground. So in the past few years, I've worked a few different jobs. I was working as an astronaut representative for the human landing system, the contract that SpaceX has to build the first lander for the moon missions for the Artemis program. I had a baby, and then I came back to work, and I was working as a branch chief for some assigned astronauts. So I'm not sure, for my next assignment, hopefully I'll be involved in Artemis in the future. Things are probably a little bit delayed, but we'll be getting there in the next few years. But we also still have the space station for several more years. So my guess is maybe I'll be back on the space station before any possible Artemis missions, but we'll have to see how it all plays out.
Christer?
Oh, me? Well, I'm a retired astronaut. I didn't choose that myself, but ESA didn't want to send me anymore to space. So, but I'm working. I will continue for some years for sure. Work with KTH as a professor there in spaceflight and supporting Saab. I'm working as an advisor here, and I try to support all kind of Swedish space activities, I would say. I mean, that's in my overall goal. I unfortunately don't expect to go to space myself again, although I would have loved to, but I hope I can help more Swedes come to space. Right, I have a question here. What do you think is the biggest bottleneck to go to Mars?
Radiation.
Yeah, radiation. That's exactly what I would say as well.
I think it's the technology of the kind of spacecraft.
Yeah.
I think radiation is overstated.
Which part of the technology?
Yeah.
Okay, that depends on which consequence you accept.
Exactly. No, yeah, that's my.
Which part of the technology?
Well, you need a life support system, which definitely will not break, or you should be able to kind of repair it. I mean, you need so much fuel with you unless you start to produce it on Mars to also get back. I mean, okay, Elon Musk is designing his Starship spacecraft always for going that or coming back.
Yes.
But no, I don't think that radiation actually is the really biggest problem. I think it's technology.
Yeah, well, even for the Artemis program, we still have to demonstrate that the prop transfer, right? So you're saying the new technologies are part of this program right now too. Though they still have to demonstrate before we're ready to get in that vehicle. So you're right, there's a limitation. It's not an easy thing.
No. Yeah, that's right. A lot of the technology, though, there seems to be at least a plan, and at least a little bit of what you want to try. Maybe you need to demo it and develop it to be feasible and really doable. But in some of the parts, it feels like we're still grasping for how to actually do it when it comes to it. Yeah. Unless you just take the consequence.
That's what it's a big risk anyhow, so
okay.
Add on the risk to get cancer. Yeah. No, but just look at, I mean, not even the Mars sample and return mission. Are we getting together now? It's too much expensive and extremely complicated kind of architecture to build that mission. I wonder if it will happen. Maybe it makes more sense and humans there and grab stuff and come back, like the Apollo program.
Let's go.
Let's go! Yeah, are you ready to go? Yeah,
we've got a good crew right here.
Ja, vi får väl se vem som får rätt. Är det teknologin eller strålningen som utgör den största tröskeln på resan mot Mars? Framtiden får utvisa. Och rymdframtiden är spännande.
Verkligen! Och på tal om rymdframtid. När vi spelade in detta samtalet så gästades vi i studion av ett litet gäng från Spira teoretiska gymnasium och från Astronomisk ungdom. Och några av dem hade egna frågor att ställa till våra svenska rymdfarare.
You've all been to the International Space Station as we know, but we're seeing some new possible space stations and a big shift in that area, and also maybe the space station in the ISS won't be around forever as we're seeing. What do you first of all think that the future of life in low or medium Earth orbit will look like, and what sort of emotions does it bring to you thinking that what's been your home might not be around there forever?
One of the things that we're doing right now with the ISS is we are moving towards that commercialization. So there have been experiments and payloads that have been flying that are more from that commercial sector, and then eventually we'll be handing over control of the space station. There'll be new modules that Axiom's building. Maybe Marcus wants to talk a little bit about that. So we still will have this presence in low Earth orbit, but I think from the NASA perspective, it's better to have somebody else handling that and doing that in the commercial sector, because we don't have limitless resources. So we want to use the resources that we have to go for those next exploration steps. So returning to the moon with the Artemis program, eventually going to Mars. And if we have the commercial sector involved, then we have more resources to do those things.
I think that's exactly, it's really important, I think, to utilize all capacities of the commercial as well to create that normality and to utilize the low Earth orbit with the space station. I think looking at Axiom and others trying to do this, it will shift a little bit more maybe towards on-orbit manufacturing and really utilizing that microgravity possibilities, everything we can do when it comes to develop new materials, which will be both for space but mostly probably for Earth, and manufacturing new medicines or materials that we know or components that we know, but in a new way or where we utilize microgravity. So I think it might shift towards that. And I also know, looking at the Axiom station, where they take into account things that you want to develop on ISS, and then utilize that and make that happen on a new station. And that plan is it seems to be a pretty robust plan. So that's I'm expecting that to happen. And there are many other players out there that really wants to make this happen, which is great, because then you get the competition and you also get someone comes up with something, and then the other people see that and they follow along, and then we bring that development going forward.
You get this really unique view on Earth and how infinitesimally small us humans are. And I was just thinking to myself that, it must have some impact on how you view the world and how you view your lives. And maybe, has it even changed your purpose here on Earth?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people come back. I was quite an avid environmentalist before my flight, and most Swedes are much better than a lot of people around the planet. But I think a lot of people do come back with a better appreciation of how special and fragile the planet is, and how we really do need to protect it. I think that's something that a lot of astronauts come back saying. I think the other thing for me was you don't see the borders, all of these man-made constructs that we've imposed upon ourselves. And I was up there when I launched. It was September of 2019, so we didn't know what COVID was, and we watched it all happen from the space station. So that was very surreal to be watching it from space and be the only, at the time it was toward the end of my mission when things were getting really bad, there were only 3 of us up there. We were the only 3 humans that were not actually at risk of catching this disease that we knew nothing about. It was incredibly scary for everybody on the ground. So it felt very strange to be there for it. But it was one of these phenomenon that the entire planet was experiencing. One of these things that you realize we really are one human and one species, and we're all in it together. That was entirely true for COVID. The entire planet, everybody was at risk. We were all in it together. So I think that's one of these important constructs to remember, that perspective that it gives you. So I really do wish that we could bring all the eyes of all the humans to space to look down on Earth and to gain that kind of perspective, that big picture about, like you said, how insignificant we are as humans, how we do really need to all work together to solve problems. And, maybe if we had a lot of world leaders up there, that would help them with some of their views too. But it's a very valuable perspective to have.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same, and now I only came back a little bit more than a week ago from space, right? So I haven't really manifested, so I don't know how it's going to change me or if it will change me.
You look different.
I look very different. But what I can say though is that the first day I came up there, I looked out and the world's beautiful and the Earth looks, and you can see this thin atmosphere. But it wasn't until maybe 4 or 5 days into the mission, going down and see the same view, then all of a sudden it started to become emotional in a way that I did not foresee. I read about the overview effect, and I knew that astronauts had described this, but I didn't really expect that to be super strong to me, except from seeing and realizing or getting some of my already existing values reinforced or strengthened. But I have to say that the emotional reaction that I had after a few days almost every time, sometimes when I had a task I focused on, I didn't see it, but almost every time I dove into the cupola and looked out on Earth, space, and atmosphere at the same time, was unexpected and very, very strong. So I guess we'll know in a couple of years whether that affects how I make my choice or feel. I don't know yet, it's too early.
I don't know what you thought, but one of the most emotional moments looking from space down, that's when you can see your home from space. And I don't know how it was with you. I mean, you had a few first flights with you in different countries also. Was it, wow, that's my country? Or these reactions?
That was strong for everyone. Yeah. And you could see that. So when you got close to the time, all of a sudden you heard an alarm goes off. And some alarm goes off on their watch, on people's watches. And then someone came flying by into the cupola. And of course, that's when you get close to your country, right? So they wanted to, I want to see my home. Mm-hmm. But then after a while, after you've seen it a couple of times, people broaden out. And, no, I want to see this part of the world. I want to see this part of the world. And then all of a sudden it was the whole globe. So it really became one pretty small Earth, because as I say, it's 90 minutes and you've seen it all. So you stay there for 90 minutes, you have seen the full, you have seen 2 nights, 2 days, and it's fantastic.
A lot of very young children tend to be really interested and fascinated by space, but that interest kind of fades away as they grow older. So my question is then, why do you think that is, and what can we do to keep that spark going and to keep that fascination and curiosity?
Maybe it's because when you're a kid, it doesn't seem impossible. It seems like it's there. You can see it. Why could you not go there? And then you start thinking, I haven't been there, so of course I want to see what's out there. But then it becomes, then you grow up and it's not super likely to get there. It kind of fades away from your world, right? And I was thinking about that myself, because as a kid I was super interested, and that started to fade away. But then of course it come back now and then, enough to be here, I guess. And then, but now, having been up there, having seen how the whole space industry and the whole interest of space and the possibilities for space is growing so much, I think it's starting to become way more accessible. And having been there, it feels like it's so close. Right now it feels very close. And I know that's not rational, but it feels like I could go there tomorrow because I've been there. So it's not so I have a genuine feeling that my world have expanded, and that's a part of it. And also something that's interesting when I was up there thinking about it was that even the things that's super far away in space, when you look at a star, it's light years away, and I knew that, I had those feelings, but still it felt so much closer because I was in space, looking at the Earth, looking at space, and somehow that merged the feeling for it, so it became so much more accessible, why I want so many more people to go to space, to have that expansion of your perception of what's our world.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect answer. And I know people have said to me before, oh, you're so lucky, you're an American, it's so much easier for you to go to space than, it's not really, it's not a real dream for a Swedish child. But I think that is, as Marcus was just saying, I think it's changing now more for everybody with more commercialization from space, with new companies that are providing different kinds of opportunities. Maybe not half a year on the space station, but getting to space in different ways, or maybe even a suborbital flight. So I think it is really exciting that we're at that sort of precipice when it's becoming more normal. Yeah. It's still not, right now you have to have a lot of money to get to space, but that was true about the aviation industry at one time too, and we're, moving forward. So I think it's really exciting to have more opportunities.
Yeah, and it's also not, of course, interesting in space and become an astronaut. Maybe, I don't know if that's what you had in mind, the question. But general space is fascinating, it's interesting, and we want to use this as a kind of tool to guide young people into studying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, right? STEM, right? So everybody cannot work with space, and everybody cannot need everyone to be an astronaut, but it would be great for us if more people go into the space industry and these things, bright new ideas who can drive the costs to space even more, down and all that. We have a great guy who's been really driving the cost down at Elon Musk, but there are many others also. So that's good for all of us on Earth, and I agree. The more we go to space, the better it will be.
Tre personer som verkligen lyckats hålla nyfikenheten vid liv. Helt fantastiskt att få prata med dem alla tre på en gång.
Ja, verkligen häftigt. Och en rolig grej med nyfikenhet, det är ju att den ofta växer ju mer man lär sig. Och använder man rymden som språngbräda så finns det liksom inga gränser för vart man kan hamna. Det bevisar ju faktiskt den här serien lite grann.
Absolut. Vi pratar ju gärna om astronomi, teknologi, medicin, fysik, biologi, you name it. Och allt är förknippat med just rymden. Men du, det är några som jag vill rikta ett särskilt tack till. Och det är de här nyfikna unga hjärnorna som var med oss i Saab studio. Hugo Wik, Anita Ali Askar och Niklas Engelhardt Önne. De var med och ställde frågor till Fuglesang, Jessica Meir och Marcus Wandt i det här avsnittet. Stort tack till er alla!
Och som vanligt, tack till Armin Pendek för att du har skrivit musiken till serien.
Jag heter Marcus Pettersson.
Jag heter Susanna Levenhau.
Har vi åkt till Marsen görs på Beppo av Rundfunk Media i samarbete med Saab.
Hallå? Programmet gjordes av Rundfunk Media.